From Flourish DX, this is the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. With workplace mental health becoming a safety prerogative, this is the source of information on psychological injury prevention and health promotion.
Hi, and welcome to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. My name is Jason Van Schie, and I'm one of the hosts of the show. The aim of the podcast is to rapidly increase the knowledge and application of psychological health and safety in workplaces worldwide. To help with this, we usually have regular guests from around the world who are leading the way in this important area. In today's episode, we have a very special announcement to make as we are joined by two friends of the podcast. But before I make the announcement, allow me to introduce my co-host, Joelle Mitchell. How are you, Joelle?
Getting into the Christmas spirit in the office.
Yeah, it looks like someone vomited up Christmas in the office.
Sure does. Yeah, that's me. I did the Christmas vomiting.
You did. Yeah. No, we never had Christmas decorations until we had you, Joelle. So
the things
it's getting
that I bring
bigger every year.
Well, we've got more room this year, so we bought a Christmas tree instead of the teeny tiny tabletop one.
Yeah. No, it's nice-ish.
It's magnificent.
It's okay. I think it's only going to get bigger every year. I think you're just going to keep accumulating stuff, aren't you?
Maybe. We'll see.
All right. Well, I don't want to take up too much time talking about Christmas, even though it is the season.
When is this going to air post-Christmas or before Christmas?
This is actually going to air after Christmas.
Oh, there you go, listeners. You're listening back in time to pre-Christmas.
Yeah, before the global meltdown that happened
2020.
On January 3, 2023. This episode will come out after that.
You're going to feel really embarrassed if that actually happens.
Nostradamus is what I've been called.
Everybody will blame you.
Everyone will.
Yeah.
A bit like Bill Gates, like predicting.
They might not be listening
COVID.
to this, though, if that's happened. So,
but if everyone could see that star on the tree, then this whole
we should post a photo of the star on top of our Christmas tree.
Yeah, maybe do it in the show notes so that people can find it. Yeah, I think that's possible. Yeah, we'll find it. We'll find a way. Yeah,
we'll find a way.
You found a way to make the star without even being in the office. So
this is true.
I think you could work out a way to post it on the show notes.
Should I tell the listeners what I did?
No. You have to make them work
for it.
Yeah.
We'll show you later, Hayley.
So, on to our exciting announcement.
Yes.
And someone actually just piped up because it's impossible to keep this person quiet.
Sure is.
We've been experiencing that in the office in the last few days.
It's been an interesting time.
Except when he's been napping off jet lag.
Yeah.
Some of you eager and keen listeners would have heard we've got a new addition to our team who's heading up our UK team, and that is the magnificent Peter Kelly. How are you today, Pete?
Magnificent.
Hi.
That's a great description, Jason.
All right, I couldn't think of anything more descriptive that I could say on here.
And the addition of the Christmas tree with the beautiful star is puke-worthy, but I've accepted it and I'm dealing with it. I will talk to my counsellor when I get back.
Are you a humbug?
I just don't do Christmas.
So yes.
I open Christmas presents, but that's about it, really.
Yeah. Well, Pete, it's awesome to have you join the team. And this is the first podcast we're actually doing in the same room together because we've actually done many podcasts via Zoom.
I know. And Joelle is the same size as me. So
yes.
I felt.
Well, in height.
Yeah.
You know what Pete first said to me when he met you? He's like, Joelle's so small. I was like, I'm not lying. I've been saying this on the podcast for ages. She's pint-sized.
There are very few people I can see eye to eye with, and Joelle.
And it's not just because you guys are ex-regulators, but you can the same height.
Not just metaphorically, but literally.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
Tuesday was the first day we've ever actually physically met.
Yeah. It's like meeting an old friend, but not knowing whether you should give them a hug or not. But obviously, it's a workplace.
It's a workplace. No.
And Joel's not a hugger.
I'm not really.
Well, it's Christmas party tomorrow, so
I am a drunk hugger, actually. Yeah.
Okay, drink it is.
But we do have an exciting announcement. Because Pete has joined the team, we have decided to make him another host of the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. And he'll be alternating with Joelle and myself. So the idea is that Joelle and myself will continue to do an episode every Tuesday. And Alicia will be joining us as a special co-host from time to time. But on the Thursday or Friday, listeners, you'll know when this is released and we would have made a decision by then. Peter will actually be hosting another podcast with another amazing, even more magnificent co-host, the amazing Hayley Farrell. And Hayley joins us. She's still in London. So, Hayley, thanks for joining us.
Hi, team. Thank you very much. I am in not so sunny London, not as blessed as you guys are at the moment, weather-wise, but lovely to be here.
I'll tell you what, Hayley, Pete's been making the most of his time here. I don't know whether he's here for induction or here for a holiday, but he's been getting out and he's been getting all these sunset photos and all these things, and him with beer. And
I'm in my shorts.
He is wearing shorts. Can confirm.
Factor 50. And that's in the office.
Yeah.
Because we've got so many windows.
Yeah.
Exactly. I feel like it's a Southern Hemisphere takeover, though, isn't it? You know, you've got Australia and South Africa, the two of the finest wine-producing countries in the world together.
I attest to that.
Yeah. Now, so Pete has been really embracing, I guess, everything that Perth has to offer, and has been, I think, posting it to his Instagram followers,
Yes.
And making everyone really jealous. I'm like, Pete, take all the photos you want. Please don't share them with people you know back in London, because you're going to get lynched when you get back, because it is amazing weather at the moment, isn't it, Pete?
Oh, 30 degrees, 28. You get up in the morning, go for a run, and you sweat like anything. But and they've got air conditioning here, which is kind of cool, and a nap room. That's the ultimate in well-being, isn't it? Nap room.
You've been definitely availing yourself of the nap room.
Yeah. Somebody just did say that if one of you has hair lice, we could all spread it around, because it's a very well-used nap room.
Yeah, sharing is caring.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But Hayley,
I don't avail myself of the nap room.
No, for other reasons we won't get into. Hayley, we're really stoked to have you join Peter as co-host now of the Psych Health and Safety podcast, and be alternating with us on a weekly basis. So really looking forward to doing this show with you and Pete.
Thanks, Jason. Likewise. I'll have to message you every now and then when Pete's giving me grey hairs, but I'm very excited to be co-hosting alongside Pete, and I'm excited to bring some interesting topics of conversation, sometimes controversial, in the UK space.
Well, this is why we wanted you on, Hayley. We know you call it as you see it, like Pete does. So I'm sure you'll be shaking up a few beliefs over there in the UK. But what we'll do, people in the UK should know Hayley and Peter. They're very visible. They get out there regularly on the conference circuit and that sort of thing, and share their experiences around psych health and safety. But what we might do to kick off this special episode is to get to know you guys a little bit more, and what you want to achieve on your version of the Psych Health and Safety podcast. So, Pete, over to you and Joelle.
Okay. This is where we introduce ourselves.
Jason got confused with whose question it was and started doing my question.
Yeah, I'm going to let Joelle have a word.
Did a very smooth pass over to me then.
I can easily talk about myself.
I know. So, we know that you've had a long career in psych health and safety in the UK. What are some of the achievements that you are most proud of?
Most proud?
Oh, yeah.
I think it was really getting to grips with the request in 2000 to develop a national approach for work-related stress. And as in most things in my life, it started off on a few bottles of wine with a couple of other psychologists, and it ended up in a national approach that we launched in 2004. And I remember we were freaking out because it was 9 million people were off with work-related stress, and it got to 12 million by 2004. And then by 2006, it had dropped down to 9 million people. And we could actually see if you did something systemically as tackling work-related stress, you can make a real difference. Give my right arm now for 9 million at the best part of 17 million days lost to work-related stress, 914,000 people off. This is the crisis, and this is the generational crisis for work. And we have to stop putting it in the too hard category and get into doing something different. I guess I say 45,003, dragged into it, didn't want to do it, didn't see the value of it because it was too big, too clumsy and everything else. But after 3 years of working together, I think we've produced a document that has real potential to change the world of work globally. And it was, I'm a strong advocate of it now. And I've enjoyed that. And plus also really just raising the profile of mental health, because, you start in a career and then suddenly it becomes part of your sort of your life, because it's something that you're drawn to. And, I honestly, and I've said this at conferences, and I said to Hayley, if I change one person's life, then that's enough for me. And I know that sounds ridiculously psychology and American, but we don't know what impact we're going to have. We just got to be real about mental health and real about what it means to do health and well-being, which doesn't mean make you resilient and mindfulness and stroke your head and give you loads of fruits.
Good.
So
that's
you'll fit in okay here, Pete.
Yeah. we may have made some similar points on many occasions.
Yeah.
I like fruits. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think they're a good interventionist for well-being. Stress balls are great for throwing at people. Again, as long as you do a dynamic risk assessment. You'd appreciate that from being an ex-regulator.
Jason throws things at people without doing a dynamic risk assessment.
I know.
I do it on accident.
No, I know.
I'm uncoordinated.
No, the accident you did today, when you nearly took out somebody's head with the basketball.
It's pretty hard head to miss, Pete. Like it's
just for the listeners, it is actually a soft, squishy basketball, not a regulation basketball. So
it's that big.
And it's made of soft foam. So Pete, you've got a new job.
I have.
Tell us about it.
Yes. So somebody decided to give me the job of here we go, head of psychological health and safety for Flourish DX in the UK.
Now, Pete, Joelle is the global head of psychological health and safety. So does that mean that she's your boss?
Dun, dun, dun.
Joelle will try, as many bosses have before, and failed to be my boss. But yes, I mean, she's like having a sister because we're both ex-regulators. This is like we have a regulator sense of humor, which only you'll understand, which is dark at times. But actually, but it's nice to work with someone who's equally passionate about mental health, because we're in a very, 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 very rare group of people when it comes to regulation and mental health.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that Joelle's humor is dark at times. Doesn't really have
constantly.
It doesn't really have seasons. She's our office Daria, for those who remember the cartoon. So always dark.
Jason, I was trying to be positive.
Actually, I've been watching the Netflix show Wednesday recently.
I've also been watching that. Yeah. I'm not as dark as that.
Oh,
I don't think I've ever said to a group of people, "You give kidnapping a bad name."
But it'd be on brand for you. It wouldn't surprise me.
Probably, yeah, maybe.
Hey, so Pete is one half of the new co-hosting team of the Psych Health and Safety podcast in the UK. The other is Hayley. So Hayley, you've had a fairly different experience set in Psych Health and Safety. So maybe you can let our listeners know a little bit about that.
Great. Thanks, Jason. Yes, so I've got a background in HR. That was where I kind of started my role in terms of supporting people. I guess one of my, I would call successes is understanding a little bit more about health and safety and risk management. And that's one of the huge parts of shifting my focus from the people side, but really to the risk management side, and the safety side of our people at work. Successes, I think, to date would definitely be being the first practitioner globally to have implemented and embedded ISO 45003 and have been certified by BSI. So that was really fantastic. That was during my time at NCOR UK at the back end of last year. So that was fantastic. And I think another one which I like to talk about is being recognized by the Institute, the International Institute of Risk and Safety Management, for the best wellbeing strategy for a large organization. And I think it's a really different ball game when we're talking about a risk award versus a potential well-being award, because it looks at well-being through the lens of a preventative risk-based approach. And that's something that I'm super passionate about. So just great to be, I think, in working with a team who've got that foresight in terms of how do we prevent mental health, but systemically. And I think that is really what's going to change things in the space.
Now, Hayley, I got to say I'm really excited that you're joining the team as a podcast host on the Psych Health and Safety podcast, because you're not a psychologist, are you?
I'm not a psychologist, no. I have
No.
got a degree in psychometrics, but not a psychologist by practice.
Yeah.
Wow. You're going to become my best friend. I hate psychometrics. So. You
What
left
colour
out
are
that
your insights, Pete? I'm blue and red.
but you left out that you're probably, you speak it as it is, and you ask difficult questions, and I have a massive amount of respect. And when I watch you at conferences, actually asking those difficult questions, they're the ones that we want to be asking. Let's not take things for granted, and you will never take things for granted. So that's another strength.
Thanks, Pete.
Yeah, I think Hayley and I probably have a few similarities. The South African and the Dutchness coming out in us. We don't really have a filter. We'll call it as we say it.
Are you Dutch?
Yeah, especially in the space.
From Psych.
Okay.
I can't even pronounce my last name too.
I think it's really important, Jason, to have that in this space. Pete mentioned, it becomes part of your life. It becomes part of your value system. You can't do this if you're not authentic. And you've got to speak. In order to shift the needle, we have to speak up, and we can't keep doing all the things you mentioned that we shouldn't be doing, and think that we're going to make positive change for the long term. And I always say this, it's not about today, it's not about tomorrow, it's about 10 years' time. They shouldn't be having to deal with the same challenges that we're facing to get buy-in, to get leadership accountability of this type of thing. So, you've got to be straightforward in this space, and you've got to really speak up and go against the grain.
And it's funny you say that. I really admire people like that. In fact, I was asked this morning on another podcast that I'm involved in, which is around flourishing at school, which is more around a wellbeing focus. Who are my wellbeing idols? I'm like, don't really idolize anyone in the wellbeing sphere.
Just yourself.
Yeah, well, I'm not really a wellbeing practitioner. If I was, I probably would. But I said I admire people who call it out and, spot out what's wrong in the world and tell people how they should be doing it right. And I said, so people I admire are people like David Burrows and Tony LaMontagne, who I know Peter actually really likes as well, who not only can spot what's wrong in the world, but actually can say, hey, this is actually how the world should look and how we're actually going to make meaningful change in this area.
I think also you have to feel. I still, every case that you come across with them, I still get that emotional connect, which is like, this is wrong. And I think if I stop feeling it's wrong and just accept the status quo, then I think we're going to start losing it. We've got to care for that. Someone has to feel it. You've got to feel it because it's what drives you.
So I think some context around why are we adding a second frequency, a second team to our podcast, because it's not a new podcast. It's a Psych Health and Safety podcast. We're just now a double team. So we have been cognizant that we've been focusing a lot on the Australian context lately, in particular, because there has been so much going on in Australia with the regulatory reform and really all of the change and movement that's driving. But recognising that we do have a global audience. So while, we're in Australia and what's happening in Australia is exciting for us, it's probably not as exciting or relevant for other audiences. So hence our decision to bring on a UK podcasting team as well. So I guess to both of you, and I'll start with you, Peter, what is different about the UK context that you're keen to explore with Hayley in the podcast?
Well, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because since 1974, the UK has had legislation that requires you to do risk assessments for exposure to those things that cause ill health, which includes work-related stress. And built into that is a requirement to do something about it, which was later came along in the management regs. So we have a mature regulatory system which has been adopted in different parts of the world as an approach for tackling work-related stress, seeing it as risk-based. But we also were involved in the introduction of the concept of health and well-being. And I remember when it first came out in 2006, 2007, there was a report by the Foresight team, which was looking at mental capital and well-being, and it promoted the possibility that you could improve workplace, and thought, great, absolutely great. But actually what happened is what happened in the 1990s. We created a culture of coping. We took it back to the individual. So it was a backward step because people defaulted to the cheaper things, didn't they? So in the context of the UK, there are 24 million employees that are there, and we have a predominant health and well-being culture that's based at the individual level. And it didn't work, did it, during the pandemic? It didn't work. We give people mindfulness, resilience, and everything else. We didn't actually look at the job and structure the job in a different way. So, and also in Europe, over the last 15 years, they've been doing research for looking at psychosocial risk, and they're looking at how we, improve workplaces. And only in the last year, the European Parliament has twice voted for legislation on psychological health and safety. And that, for me, is an exciting piece of research and something I've waited for 15 years.
Hi listeners, Jason here. We hope you're enjoying this latest podcast episode. Now, if you're like Joelle, Alicia and myself and enjoy learning from the best, then the Flourish DX Academy is for you. The Academy includes free e-learning courses on the ISO 45003 standard for psychological health and safety at work, and associated topics such as how to conduct a psychosocial risk assessment and how to create the business case for psych health and safety. All courses feature high-quality videos, downloadable resources, multi-choice questions, and a downloadable training certificate on completion. Take your learning to the next level with all Flourish DX Academy courses included within the Flourish DX mobile app. Select podcast episodes from the Psych Health and Safety podcast and sister podcasts from Canada and the USA are also included. Get started with Flourish DX for free at www.flourishdx.com/get-started. That's www.flourishdx.com/get-started. Now back to this episode.
Yeah, and I guess the history in Australia is similar, where we have always had the Act that has the broad duties to, to identify hazards and mitigate risks and to take reasonably practicable steps to protect the health and safety of employees. So, those duties have always been there. And then, now we've got the introduction of the regs, which are making it more explicit around the requirements for psych health and safety. So, I guess some parallels there.
I mean, regulations are good, and I do say that as an ex-regulator. Having issued notices, you can issue a notice for failure to risk assess. You can issue a notice for failure to acting upon your risk assessment. Okay? It's not that you, and recently we've seen with the Health and Safety UK as a 10-year strategy, and they're prioritizing work-related stress, mental health as areas that they want to intervene on. Now, intervention could be both regulatory or it could be support and practical advice. I don't think we should shy away from regulation. It's the only area that people beg you when you're a regulator to do something. It's weird. Most of the time they tell you, don't issue a notice. But with the mental health, people they say, please issue a notice. Could you just please issue a notice? Because the board won't do anything unless you issue a notice. What about you? I mean, you've been on the boards, haven't you, Hayley?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. We speak about the Health and Safety at Work Act. We have shouted safety, whispered health. We have got ISO 45003 and we've got the World Health Organizations. I guess the difference, as you've just mentioned, Joelle, is in Australia, you've got regs that are making it a bit more explicit. And one of the things when I went through the process of implementing 45003 is that it's not an accredited program. It's only certified. And things like that, I think there's still some way that we need to go. We've got some space to move this forward so that people actually are doing this because it is the right thing to do, of course, but also because there is a legal requirement. And I think one of the things that I would like to see us discussing in this space is organizations, specifically in the UK, the NHS is struggling. Organizations are taking on a lot more in terms of looking after the health of their employees. But that's not just because we want healthy people, but how do we really get through the fact that it is about performance, productivity, longevity, sustainable workforce? I think that's really, really important. So it's it's something that we've got a long way to go, I do believe, for us to really make sure that people are taking this seriously. But what frustrates me quite often in this space is that there isn't any direction for people who are leading well-being potentially, because there's no specific role description. There are a lot of different roles, a lot of people doing what they feel is right. And you know what? We need advocates. We need a well-being movement. That is absolutely the right direction to go. But we cannot, 5 to 10 years later, still be in a conference room talking about mental health first aid. That is not going to solution the systemic problem that we've got in terms of mitigating those work-related hazards that are exacerbating a person's stresses, personal, which is exacerbated by work. So I think for me, that's definitely something that I'm keen to explore, and that people, they start to say, oh, we want to enhance our well-being strategy. So you're saying you've embedded it, but now we want to enhance. What does that actually mean? And are you actually ready to do what's needed, as Pete said, or are you waiting on a notice to say, well, you can see you've got 70% of your workforce who are stressed. What are you doing about that? Or, you know, what's actually going to make you do something about that? And is that a notice? Is that regulation? I think it's a really interesting space and something that we need to bring people on the journey and continually create more awareness around.
And remember, a well-being survey isn't about how good you are. If there's something bad in there, like you're not functioning well, people are not happy, that's evidence. And I asked for that when I was a regulator. Show me a well-being survey. Oh, 40% of people experiencing stress, depression, and anxiety. What did you do? Well, you sent them to an EAP. And I said, what did you do? What did you do to change the stressors that were there? And that's the question that is there. It literally is. I've got a well-being survey. It's interesting to embed it. Does embed it simply mean having it? Or is it a whole lot of other things? And I think, you know, Hayley, you'll have seen that with 45,003.
Yeah.
The way this works is embedding, and that knowledge of embedding it in the processes and systems that were in MCOR, I think, you know, and doing it at lightning speed.
It's long term as well, like you say. It's not just in one function. It's not just in the people function. It's in your change management processes, continuous improvement, you know, even extended, and I think this is something that we haven't picked up on yet, but even extended to procurement, to your supply chain, to your customers and your community. In the UK, we've got, specifically if you're tendering for government contracts, procurement policy note PPN 0620. And in that, it asks you, how are you looking after the well-being of your own employees? And how are you looking after that of your community clients and supply chain? So for me, it's about how do we elevate these conversations so that it's not just because it's the right thing to do by your own people, but for the longevity of humankind almost.
Yeah, Hayley, one thing you mentioned when you were talking there a little earlier was around how there is a proliferation of kind of wellness types of approaches, things like mental health first aid that are very much focused on the individual and, you know, identifying symptoms and getting support through things like EAP, and less risk-based systemic approaches, right? And I've got to say, when I was in London, would have been, only a few months ago now, for that conference that Pete went to as well.
October.
Was it October?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. It was only a couple of months ago. Wow.
Yeah.
Time flies. When I was there, I was really amazed. It felt like I'd gone back in time, like 5 to 10 years in Australia, with the sort of things that were being talked about in the UK. So do you reckon that wellness approach and the individual focus is like the go-to in the UK?
Very much so. I still think that it's an individual-based approach. There are some excellent companies leading the way that are taking a more team-based approach to create a culture of psychological safety so that we can look at the challenges as a team. But I still think it's the individual, and it's often reactive. It's on the back of a stress, a burnout, a challenge in the workplace, even like a grievance, often that comes up. And then it's very much, what has the individual done wrong? Or what can the individual do a little bit better, rather than, what about the environment in which the individual needs to flourish in? So I think there is still that individual approach as well. Somewhat, though, there is an element that organizations need to understand that there are different approaches within your well-being strategy. So we've got that organizational risk-based prevention, but what we have also got is an element of, we need to provide our employees with resources, tools, education, so that they can self-manage proactively their own well-being. We as an organization can't take all of that on. We need to encourage and enforce and remind, but what we are legally responsible for, I say that loosely because I'd like to see that being in the future, is the hazards in which we expose them to. And I think there's a bit of a gap to fill in terms of what we focus on. A lot of organizations have done excellent stuff to do that promotional signposting, resources, education. We need to start to look at the things that maybe aren't as shiny and as flashy and as in the face of the employee, but actually really make that fundamental change. I'll take workload for an example. Often people will say, workload, it's got a huge impact on my well-being. No amount of treating an individual is going to prevent workload having a negative impact. And if we can get workload right, if that's the one thing you focus on, that is going to have a huge impact on your stress related absence, etc. So really focusing on those broad organizational factors rather than just the individual is a space that I think the UK has got to grow into.
Yeah, and definitely that was obviously our thinking, and obviously why we want to run the podcast specifically with more of a UK focus with you and Pete. And I guess on that, Pete, you would have seen companies not doing this well at all, in that you've had to hand out improvement notices where there was obviously harm being caused and companies weren't managing the risks accordingly. But have you seen any UK organisations that are actually leading the way and, using primary controls?
Yeah, they're normally the ones they're ones that we've either issued notices against.
So they actually did improve.
So what? A notice creates change.
And a notice could
shocking.
Yeah, my word. Surprise. But given that we haven't done hundreds of them, there are organisations that do get this, but then they're aligning it to at the moment they're aligning it to ESG, aren't they? Environment, sustainability, and governance. Well, let's remember this. Psychological environments that promote health are environmentally good and create sustainable organizations. And actually, from a governance perspective, having a risk and knowing how you're going to manage it is really, really important. And I think actually we've got to play to what is the current fad, and that's what it is. ESG is now around. It was well-being. It was a number of other different things. But I actually think that the lockdown and the whole pandemic has given us an opportunity to change the narrative of what we mean by work. We can actually introduce risk-based into people's sort of psyche and sort of talk about it. It is mad, absolutely mad, that you would wait for 3 people to lose 3 fingers on a guarding on a machine before you put the guarding on the machine. And in mental health, we wait until there are 10. 20 sometimes, and then we put something in. It's got to stop. You can't wait until you've got a mass of people and then treat when we know if you get workload right by understanding that the system doesn't have to be king, but has to be designed around the person that's working on the system, that makes a world of difference. I've talked about previously where I went to a factory where in this job they had to pick up biscuits and put them into a plastic container. And then afterwards I said, how many biscuits do they pick up in this job? And they went 17. Can I do some numbers? And I worked out in a 7-hour shift, 17,000 times they're doing this between a shift of 8 people. Now the thing was, if you slow down the actual conveyor belt by half a second, you would reduce the probability of those people suffering from from that condition, because actually, and you'd still get the same amount of food through.
So the repetitive stress injury.
Yep. But what comes with repetitive stress is they start twisting and turning, and then their mental health gets impacted. You watch them through; they're all bubbly and dead on it at the start of the shift. At the end of the shift, they're down. They're not talking. They're not engaging, and they're also doing that. And you see it a lot of times when you go to jobs where we say, "No, I can't do it because the system's developed in such a way." Yeah, and the system wasn't developed around the person. It was developed around delivering a product, and that product that they deliver becomes king. And we have to change that. You don't have an endpoint product unless your people come through, because if they get ill, they're ill, and you lose them off the line. That ultimately affects your productivity.
Well, and I mean, ultimately, somebody or a group of people made a decision to design a system in a particular way. So just because that's what the system says now, well, guess what? We can change it.
Well, you can, yeah, and we should change it. Not even that you can change it, we should change it.
What if there was no spoon?
It's an absolutely. It's an ineffective system. Because they didn't design it around people. You don't have a job. You don't have a business without people. Even the most autonomized industries need people. So robots building cars need people to do the intrinsic elements to it. So you've got to design that around. So yeah, I think the whole thing that we've gone through, we need to change the narrative, putting people at the heart of what you do, heart of health and safety.
Yeah, I like
Pete,
that.
You raise a really good point, I think, around joining the language as well. You know, you mentioned physical, and obviously physical environment, tools and equipment is a part of one of the three factors, that we have to make sure we preventative risk-based. But it's that manifestation in a mental health, or of mental health, if you're physically unwell. And for me, there's still some work in the UK, globally, to understand how they all impact each other. You know, we talk about emotional, we talk about social, we talk about mental, but often in this space, mental is always the one that we talk about. And we forget that other factors in the workplace that you can't normally hang your hat on mental health as explicitly, will have a long-term effect if it is continuous. So frequency, how often are they exposed to that? We're not saying solution everything, but we are saying let's link up and let's think about a broad range of positive factors in the workplace and negative factors that impact well-being. And that's not just in the well-being or people's function. It's so much broader than that.
Let's send people home the same as they came in, or healthier, not worse off and ill. And that's the thing that drives me every day. Why do we do it? And that's exactly it. We don't map it all together and go, do you know what? Maybe this isn't working. How are we going to do it better? So,
yeah, but as you say, Hayley, some of these things, they don't have all the bells and whistles and are shiny and you win awards for, right? But, they are about changing the way we think about work. And if I think about industries where it's been designed about something other than the worker, like education, it's all about student achievement and getting curriculum done and getting the right amount of hours done. If we think about healthcare, right? Like it's around hygiene, patient safety, all that sort of stuff. It's not designed around people. And people keep saying, well, it's too hard to change these systems. They've been like this forever. And like Peter said, they've been designed for other purposes, not with the human at the center of or the worker at the center of the design. And that's what we have to, start working through. And it's not going to happen overnight. But unless we have people who are brave and going, well, let's actually talk about the issues, and we're not going to commit to changing this within a month. Some of these things might take years, maybe even a decade or longer to achieve. But unless we acknowledge and actually start working on plans to address them, we're going to keep having this mental health crisis that we've got.
Yeah, because actually in the past, you might have had stop measures where you physically stopped the job because after eight hours down a pit, you'd be coming 8 to 12 hours, you'd be coming up, and then you had those periods off. We don't have off time, do we? We take it home with us. We have a BlackBerry, an iPhone, or whichever, Samsung. Just trying to name any smartphone.
BlackBerry, wow.
Yeah, it's all right. We're not getting paid for comments. It's okay. My Palm Pilot.
But you had all these. But all of these have one brilliant design thing on it. It's called an off switch. And actually, as an intervention, it's the most effective thing. Switch it off. I mean, need it for alarm, buy an alarm clock. One of those old ones with the bells that go, they wake you up. We've just sold out. We've sold out to systems and gone, we're not going to challenge them. But we have to. This feels like 1984 coming to life, doesn't it? You know, that vision of that utopian vision of being controlled by autonomous robots and things. We need to put well-being measures into our own life. Cut off time, spend time with your family, spend time doing something else that you want to do. Like tonight, I'm going to go and look at another beach, take some sunset pictures because it relaxes me.
I'll get those too.
Yeah, you will. Yeah, well, you're my WhatsApp list as a friend, so you're all right. So you'll get them. But yeah, so things like that.
I don't think she wants them, Pete.
No. I send them to Jason. He's in nice pictures. So he's obviously, you know, he's just
but don't share them with your UK friends. I said they will hate you.
Okay.
I said.
Okay, fine. They haven't hated me thus far. They said it's beautiful. There you go.
And they're saying, I hate that prick.
Not the worst thing he's said into a microphone.
No.
Apparently not. I was quoting Peter's friends there. It wasn't what I was saying.
That's true. Yeah.
I am actually speechless for once.
Yeah, okay.
But not for long.
Quick, Joelle. Quick.
So, next question is, what are you both hoping to achieve for your UK-focused segment of the Psych, Health and Safety podcast? Peter?
I want to change the narrative of the conversation. And if that means we have to challenge the status quo, we will challenge the status quo and we'll bring people on to have those conversations. I think that's really important. I'm sorry, but, you know, at 914,000 people off with stress, depression and anxiety, this is a crisis. Okay. And this is a crisis that just deserves way more than wait until they're ill. We've got to get our heads around prevention and we've got to get the narrative to think we're going to look to prevent this. Otherwise, the kids that are coming in as apprentices now with depression and anxiety are not going to be catered for. We got 10 years of really significant time where we should be doing things. If we don't do it in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to reap the problems for many, many years afterwards. And it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable to go to work and be made ill and come home and just accept it and put it in the too hard territory. Sorry, no way. And I'm 55. Will I accept that it's okay to go into work to be made ill? It shouldn't be. And if I die at 67, and at least we've changed it, at least then we've made some difference. But I seriously, it is the issue of the moment. Let's get in there and let's have these conversations and change people.
Before I give my piece on why I want to do this, I just want to respond to what Pete said. It's not acceptable, but also with the generations coming through, you know, diversity and inclusion is increasing.
Yep.
People want different things and they won't accept it either. You know, there are different generations in the workforce, sometimes 5 different generations, and we need to understand that they've all got different needs as well. So I think there's that element to that lens to explore it through as well. But the one thing for me, I think the biggest thing I want to achieve is real, authentic, sustainable conversation. There is a lot of talk in this space, but I want to make sure that it's actually impactful and that it's, you know, that our podcast is the place that you can come to really hear things that can help you change the organization that you might be in, but also where we've got guests where there's different perspectives, different authentic challenge, I think is really, really important. So that's what I'd like to bring, because I don't want it to be in the realms of other conversations where it's about, how do I say this in the most polite way? I don't just want it a face on a podcast because it's a podcast. There's a lot of that, you know, let's talk about, you know, it's got to be meaningful and it's got to land well and it's got to really make change.
Bring it on.
No pressure. Yeah. We're not setting ourselves.
It's all right. We've got your back, guys. We've got Joelle and I've done over 100 podcasts and we haven't been cancelled yet. So you guys will be all right.
Yeah. Yep. And no, I completely agree, Hayley. It needs to be impactful. We need to be unafraid of speaking the truth as we see it and pointing out uncomfortable realities and holding people's feet to the flame if that's what we need to do. Because Pete's right. This is the time this is the pivotal time in history to actually do something about this. And if we miss this opportunity, as with many other things going on in the world at the moment, what's the world going to be like in 50 years?
Yeah, it's not just this generation we're going to worry about.
No.
I do agree with everything Joelle said, except holding people's feet to the fire.
That was metaphorical, Pete, not literal.
Okay,
But it would be on brand for you, Joelle.
I'm
Joelle, that's
psychological torture, Jason, not physical torture.
Joelle, that's dark.
Yeah, she's an ex-regulator after all.
Hayley's going to say something here.
Just to wrap that up, so much damage can be done and that's what worries me, is a lot of people talking, and yes, there's freedom of speech, 100% agree with that, diversity, inclusion, but I want people in the space to be almost singing from the same hymn sheet so that we can make that change, and how do we bring people along with us on that journey so that the damage, that we can undo some of the existing damage, that we're not sitting in boardrooms in 10 years' time only talking about mental health first aid. So I just think that that's imperative in this space. Otherwise, it's just the same narrative with a different face.
We're all agreed. Time is now. So let's make a difference.
Thank you. Do we get one of these?
Why?
I don't know.
Okay, Joelle hates it. Yeah, we're. This is actually the first time we're recording in this new studio. Other listeners would have seen this maybe before this episode, possibly, but Joelle hates it. So it's something that you might be able to take it back with you, Pete, because Joelle doesn't like it.
So for people who are listening and not watching, we've got a new background behind us. It just arrived in the office today. So
can I just point out it's 3 meters along, across, and 2 meters. It's not a small banner.
So you'll be bringing 2 of those back, Pete. One for yourself and then one for me when I'm in podcast mode, right?
DHL or something like that.
But Hayley, we will get you a mic set for your podcasting, to improve your audio a little bit.
Yeah, you didn't offer that to me.
No, I know you've really invested in your own mic, so why would I buy you a new
one of these?
No, you're not getting one of these. No.
All right.
No. Hey, guys, we're super excited to have you on. Welcome aboard. And, we look forward to listening to your episodes as you bring them out and interview some really great guests over there in the UK.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And Hayley, get ready for the sunset photographs.
Can't wait, Pete.
Nice. All right, listeners, well, that brings us to the end of this very special episode. We're really excited about the UK team starting over there in the new year. Don't forget, we do video these things when we speak to our guests, so you'll be able to catch the video on the Flourish DX YouTube channel. We'll also take some clips from this as well as all our other episodes and put them on the Flourish DX LinkedIn page. While you're over on LinkedIn, you'll find the 4 of us, Joelle, Pete, Hayley, and myself, are very active over there. So one of the best ways to connect with us and continue the conversation is just to hit us up via direct message on LinkedIn.
Or if you want to appear as a guest.
Yes, actually, we've had a number of people come in lately who have been offering up their services. So some big names coming in. So, yes, if you want to come on as a guest and you think you want to contribute to this conversation and make a difference in this world and how we do workplace mental health, then please do reach out to all of us.
But probably not if you're like a provider of meditation or something.
Yeah, or if you're trying to shill your services on our podcast. No.
Yeah, we don't like that.
No. You'll get cancelled pretty quickly. All right. Thank you very much to all of our listeners, and we'll catch you next episode.
You've been listening to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. To stay up to date with the latest on psychological injury prevention, follow Flourish DX on LinkedIn and subscribe to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast at www.psychealthandsafety.com.